Welcome to Shifting Talent. This is a show where we're going to be exploring how technology is redefining the strategies and the people that companies actually need to win in the future. So I'm going to be your host for this show, Robert Roll, co-founder of HTD Talent. And today we're diving into a topic that I think is reshaping every corner of the enterprise, which is AI. And our first guest is someone who knows a thing or two about staying ahead of the curve. So Gerald Gordon is with us today. Gerald is a veteran technologist and an engineering leader, and now the founder of Reference Me, which is a platform that's helping organizations to verify talent faster and more effectively. And he also coaches senior tech leaders on how to get the most out of their next career move. So Gerald, you've built and led teams through multiple waves of transformation. So I'm really excited to get your thoughts on where we're at and where we're going. And honestly, I think we're going to be spending some time talking about your background, but I'd love for you to weigh in on what we're seeing right now, because the world is literally evolving around us so quickly that what was cutting edge 6 months ago, it literally feels dated today. We saw OpenAI drop GPT-5 last week. The world is moving crazily. It was less than 2 years ago we saw 3.5 come out and really get that mass adoption. So I want to get your expertise and thought process around this. Do you see this pace of innovation just continuing, or do you think it's bound to level off at some point?
Robert, one, I want to thank you for allowing me to be on the show. I'm super excited to be here. And this is one of my favorite topics, AI in general. And the one thing that I can say is most technology does plateau at some point, but I don't see any signs of slowing down, probably within the next 2 or 3 years. And that's a long term for a technology in general, because you're on one fad 1 minute and then you're on to the next fad the next minute. And in our case, think about what you just said. You use the term GPT. How many people in the world right now know what Chat GPT is? The speed in which we are picking up new information and it's becoming mainstream is even faster than when we were thinking about Facebook and Instagram and all of this stuff. It took them a little while before grandma got onto Facebook and started posting pictures and really got it.
Yep.
Look how fast we have picked up on GPT. So now everybody knows about it and they're all using it in different types of ways. And so the speed, I think, is going to continue probably until 2 or 3 years from now. But it's exciting to be in this space, and I don't see it plateauing anytime soon.
Yeah. It's funny. I was just chatting with my brother the other day, and my mom was visiting him out in Las Vegas, and he was sharing that, she's one of the only people that we know who actually doesn't know what ChatGPT is, right? But literally everyone else does. And she's not tech savvy. She's a nurse, and retiring soon. So it's just kind of funny to see, folks who don't know anything about these tools literally are so few and far between, right? And difficult to find. Everyone's using them in some way, shape, or form. And there's so many of them. But I want to spend some time, let's take AI into the conversation of talent, right? And recruiting and technical talent, because I think it's really, an interesting use case that a lot of people were seeing more and more of. And so I'm curious, as you kind of think about where AI is today, are there things that you think people maybe overestimate about AI's ability to assess talent? And I'm asking because we're hearing more and more on LinkedIn that people will do a first or maybe second round interview fully with AI, just them and the machine. What do you think about that?
I hope that slows down dramatically. I think that we're humans first. And no matter what technology we put in there, it should be enhancing our ability to do our job, but not replacing our ability to be connected. So the interesting thing when you mention why companies are doing this, it's the AI is actually causing the problem. So when I put a job opening out, and in 2 minutes, I get 300 applicants. And by the
Hmm.
end of the day, I get 10,000 people.
Yeah.
Now they're like, well, we need to figure out a way to filter them. So why don't we have them use AI to filter the 10,000 people? And so now you're still in this AI arms race where the individual is using the AI tools at their disposal, but then the companies are going to use AI tools at their disposal. And now we have this big cat and mouse game. I'm going to get ChatGPT 5. They're going to get the enterprise version of ChatGPT 5. And then
Yeah.
every time I put something in front of them, they're going to create something else using the AI technology. Where's the human
Yeah.
in the whole mix of this? What happens is we get filtered out. And the ones that are able to play the game get all the way to the top, but they may not be your best people.
Hmm.
Or even worse, you create artificial ways to strip people out, meaning you have to apply to this job within the first 10 minutes in order to get a call back. So
Yeah.
you mean to tell me that you're the person that can be a perfect fit for this role? They may have applied and been number 1,000, but you'll never see them
No.
because you're using a date and time and a speed to determine whether this person is right for the company. I think that that's going to cause drastic problems in the future.
Yeah. It's happening now. Like I have never seen people apply to roles at the speed with which they're doing it, and a lot of them, like we know there's tools out there that are just mass applying to everything that looks good. I actually tell our recruiting team it's not until after 24 hours that we start to really see the quality candidates start to come through because we just get hit, immediately. It's a catch 22, right? Because if you see a job that just opened up 5 hours ago and you apply for it, I immediately, as a recruiter, think, oh, that's probably AI. They applied too quickly, right? So it's this world as it's rapidly just shifting and changing around us, figuring out how we play in this space. I'm curious how you take that forward a step into the actual interview yourself, because you have interviewed many folks over the years, many engineers. And there's this new trend that's been going on probably the last year and a half where you ask someone a technical question and they pause and you sit there and you see their eyes drop and it seems like they're potentially reading off the screen. So that's happening already today. We have sometimes run into folks who are saying during the interview, you must share your screen and share all of your monitors with us so we can see that AI is not up there. I mean, it just has reached this level that seems almost absurd. Let's take it from that standpoint, but maybe other areas that you can think of. AI is going to be part of the interview process. How do you see it actually maybe transforming some of these technical interviews that we're doing over the next few years?
Yeah, I want to fact check myself if this is really true, but it looks like Meta is moving in that direction
Hmm.
where the engineers, when they come in for the interview, you're allowed to use AI.
Okay.
So you can be in the room with other engineers and they don't care what tool you're using. How will you solve this problem? What prompts will you actually use? How do you use AI in a working setting? And they want to see how you think and how you engage. I actually think that that's great because anytime that you hire someone, you want them to be able to use the best tools possible. And if those tools are AI and they know how to use it, why not allow it inside of the interview? So
Hmm.
that's where I think we can use AI as a tool. It's just a tool, but use it in a very creative way. I think that we'll get back to in person interviews. I think
Mm-hmm.
that people will actually have to come on site and go to a drawing board and actually show their thoughts on paper. Now, it may not be the first interview, but it should be the second or third interview where you're actually having hands-on
Mm-hmm.
connection with the people. But the challenge is how do you get into that room?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
that's where they don't know you from anywhere and they have to choose you out of 10,000 candidates. And that's where the next phase of our whole industry is going. It's not going to be who you know, it's going to be who knows you. And
Yeah.
the reason why we can say who knows you is because before I even talk to you, I'm going to get a first impression from your social media presence.
Hmm.
And I don't think people are thinking about that the way that they should. The influencers have figured it out. If an influencer wanted to work for me and they already have 30 million followers, they're going to get a leg up over anybody else that's interviewing because they've already shown that they have influence.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we want to do the same thing when it comes to hiring talent. It's no more learning on the job. They want you to come into the job with the experience to help be a culture add or a
Hmm.
culture multiplier. And you can't come in as a culture multiplier saying that you're learning on the job.
No, 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 100%. And I want to go back for a second because you were talking about how do you get your foot in the door, right? And one of the things that you've already referenced as well is just the sheer number of resumes that managers are seeing. But there's also the fact that these resumes that are coming through now are perfect. Like they are all written the same way. Sometimes we get a follow-up email from candidates once they've applied and they look identical, but they're perfect. I almost want to reach out to the person who has a typo on their resume because I know that at least there's probably a real person here, unless the AI has already figured out that maybe that's an indicator of how I'm going to choose who to interview. So, how do you think that engineering managers are changing how they pick the people that actually get a chance to interview from resumes alone if there is no connection like what you were alluding to?
Wow, great question. So I know for sure because I have clients and they're going through that process right now. They know that last year they would put their resumes in and get all types of calls from recruiters. And now they put their resume in and it's just lost in a sea of things. So that's actually happening today, right now. The way that I do believe we move forward, though, is building real connections with people, not just at the time that you need to get hired, but on a continual basis. So, the very first thing is you have to recognize that if you're not someone who actually has built a media presence, you need to start doing that. It's no
Mm.
longer a luxury. If I can't find you on LinkedIn, I don't see that you're commenting on great articles. I don't see you sharing any thought leadership, but yet
Yeah.
you are a senior leader. That's going to be a problem
Hmm.
because the way that people are going to address you and find you and want to actually talk to you is going to be because of your media presence.
Yeah. Does the same apply to engineers, those who are getting to senior and lead principal levels of their career? Should they be putting out thought leadership as well on technical areas on platforms like LinkedIn, or like where's the place to do that to make sure that that's actually being seen when you're interviewing?
Okay, sometimes I want to take a step back from the interviewing space in general, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you're a senior leader today, you should be a thought leader. And thought leaders contribute to PhD papers, research, open source software. So they should have a portfolio and they're helping other people improve their software applications, engage in panels where they can talk about startups and how, so they should, their worth is not based off of what they do with their hands. Their worth is actually based off of the relationships that they built.
Hmm.
And so they need to be connectors because the system is going to require, no matter what company you go to, the higher you go, the more system thinking you have to have. And in order to have those system thinkings, you have to actually have connections with people. And so the most senior in our group, they're not even writing code. What they're doing is they're building the connections and creating the architecture so that other people can actually code and put these pieces together.
Hmm.
So just to shorten the conversation in this particular space, what I would
Yeah.
say is you would have to build your portfolio outside of the company. But by doing so, you provide value within the company. So the
Mm-hmm.
more people that you connect to, the more open source projects you contribute to, the more you share your thought leadership with up and coming leaders or adjacent companies that are doing things that complement what the company is doing, the more valuable you're going to be. So you
Yeah.
have to actually grow outside of your company. And those
Yeah.
who don't are going to have a hard time when, 4 or 5 years pass and they're wondering what's going to be my next move, but they haven't spent any time building the brand outside of the company that they're in. I think that
Mm-hmm.
that's going to be a problem.
Yeah. Yeah. So like I feel like LinkedIn is the obvious choice. This is, I mean, may or may not even be interesting to you, but I'm just curious. When I look through LinkedIn, um, and I sometimes see this with technologists a lot, but I also see it with leaders, senior leaders. Like you just see a profile, a LinkedIn profile that someone clearly has not put any time into telling you something about them. I'll be picky and say they may not even have a picture, right, or anything. It's just blank. They sometimes don't even share their full name. You just see first name and last name as an initial, and a couple of jobs with no detail whatsoever. What's your advice to those people when we're thinking about how the world starts to shift and change and how we create that presence? And I've seen you talk about a couple of these types of things on some of your videos. So, what is your advice to people starting with their LinkedIn profile in terms of how do I establish myself and show the work that I'm actually doing, the value that I'm providing, and some of the thought leadership that's possible?
I'm going to jump in and add something to this. What I suggest to my clients is that LinkedIn can go away. Facebook can go away. Instagram can go away, right? We're using these systems, of course, today and they're available, but it's possible that they'll go away. So I don't want to wrap my identity only in LinkedIn. What I want to do is have it much more diverse. So I believe you should have accounts everywhere. So Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, um, and things of that nature. But I also 100% agree that you want to be able to control your brand fully. And what better way to do that if you're a technologist is to have a personal website. So
Hmm.
you should be able to go to robertroll.com and you are talking about you and your company is just happens to be something you do, but who you are, you have full control over that. So a good example for me, if you go to geraldsamuelgordon.com, I own that, and you'll see who I am. You'll see the projects that I've been a part of. You'll see the different businesses that I support. You'll hear thought leadership about the things that I care about. I think that as we continue to go down this path where technology is all over the place, you have to have a digital presence that you control. Because
Mm-hmm.
if you don't, then you are at the mercy of everything else that's around you.
Yeah, yeah. It's good advice. I'm sure someone out there is currently buying robertroll.com before I can get to it, so I have to pay extra money for it, but we'll see. We'll see if we can get that going. And it's great advice. I want to shift a little bit to thinking about, okay, we've talked about interviewing, talked about resumes, we talked about, starting to stand out there. Just the general workforce of the future. And where I want to start with this is thinking about there's a lot of junior and mid-level talent out there who are getting this anxious feeling when I look into the Reddit forums about AI is going to maybe replace us, right? Or at least it's going to overshadow our capabilities. Like, what is your advice? What is your advice to the junior to mid-level person who's concerned about being overshadowed by AI and how they can make sure they are leveling up with these tools as they come out to continue to be able to apply problem-solving capabilities in ways that companies find valuable?
The last thing that I want to touch on, which I think is critical, whether you have AI or not, your problem solving ability needs to continue to grow. So the very first thing that I would tell if you're just coming out of school or you're a mid-level or you're even trying to get into a different role, let's say you're in healthcare and you want to go to tech, or you're in manufacturing and you want to move over to tech. The most important thing that we have in our toolkit as humans and as new engineers or anything is our ability to problem solve.
Hmm.
And so being curious about problems, reading up on how they're solved, continuing to keep that skill alive is going to help no matter what system that you use. And so, yes, those who are not curious and they choose not to improve on their problem solving skills, whether those problem solving skills are social,
Yeah.
they can be technical, and they can be environmental. If you are not honing those skills, it's going to be a problem whether AI is there or not. So that's number
Mm.
one. You have to know how to look at things in a particular way, work with other people, and come up with solutions. Number two, I think some of our younger people don't realize the advantages that they have. So their teachers, the counselors that are in the schools have connections to companies because companies, the whole reason why the school is getting you through the system is so that you could go work for a company. So why
Yeah.
not use it in the reverse? Make sure that you're talking to your schools and saying, what connections do you have in business? Can you give me an initial intro?
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to have to use those resources that you have. And frankly, if you're new, you actually have a lot more resources than somebody who's been in the work field for 5, 6 years because they don't have those contacts anymore.
Yeah.
So you have people who are interested in newer talent because they want a different way to actually impact their culture. So there's a huge value in using the resources you have to kind of get you in the door. So
Mm-hmm.
internships are very good. Talking to guidance counselors about the companies that frequently go to campus and ensure that there's a connection there. And then, of course, working with third party systems. I don't understand why so many students don't take advantage of this. If there is a system in between that's willing to teach you, similar to the program that you have, about the connection from coming out of school to what you need in the workplace, the amount of not just learning that you get, but the maturity that you grow into how to deliver under pressure, meeting new people and building relationships, you should be taking advantage of that now.
Yeah.
And I think that students that don't do that, they end up in the news talking about they can't find a job, but they didn't do everything possible to make them successful. And
Hmm.
one of those things is building those connections. And yes, you need to invest in yourself even when you come out of college. And maybe that investing is creating that, joining a bridge program that gets you from where you were in college, professional grade ready, so that you can actually show your impact right away when you go into a company.
Yeah. Yeah. We're definitely seeing it more and more. It is becoming necessary to be able to show that you are ready to make an impact when you join the team at any skill level, right? That is absolutely present. Let me hop back really quick to problem solving because there's a trend that I've seen a few articles about recently where there's some concern from the scientists who feel like people are losing their problem solving capabilities because they're relying so heavily on the models from AI labs to help them with the decisions that they typically would have had to take a second and think about and come up with something unique or novel or creative to solve that problem. But instead, and I've even caught myself doing this a couple of times, I go ahead and plug a prompt in and say, well, give me a starting point. What would you do in this situation? And then I turn off maybe that side of my brain that's allowing me to actually solve the hardest part of that problem. And I'm just now reacting to the solution that the model gave me. What do you think about that and what that does to problem solving capabilities for people? If that consistently needs to keep improving, does it concern you?
Well, I do think it's genius to even come up with the prompt. I know that we don't treat it as a skill, but it is a skill. So the fact
Hmm.
that you even knew to ask it to do that is a skill. And it's not a skill we ever had to use. So maybe we change the way we think is, how do I use these machines to the best of my ability? Do I understand what different models, expertise, and what do they have? And then how do I chain them together in order to come up with a good solution? So in my mind, I don't look at it as an issue. I just look at it as, if you are someone who is a practitioner or a craftsman, you have to learn the tools. And once you learn the tools, they should make you more effective. So in my mind, I look at AI as a tool, something that can take my expression of the things that are in my head and my ability to problem solve and actually multiply them. And but you can also multiply bad stuff. But that's the way that I look at it. So for
Yeah.
example, my daughter this is a great example, right? My daughter was working on a project, and it was with meningitis, and they were looking at the cells, and so she was manually drawing circles on the screen and then measuring in microns the cells. I looked at it and I said to my son, who also wants to code, I'm like, why don't you write a program to help your sister? And he's like, well, where do I start? So we go to ChatGPT, and in 30 minutes, we had a program that created a grid on the same picture that she had. It circled all the stuff, measured it, and then spit it out in a CSV. And it took us 30 minutes to do it.
Wow.
So something that would have taken me maybe 2 weeks to really think about and find all the use cases and build, since we both were coders, we just described what we wanted to do and ensure that it was able to work the way we expected to work. And that was it.
Hmm.
And we gave her an opportunity to speed up her process probably 2 or 3 times more, and reduce the number of errors, and be able to import larger substrates so that it can automatically create those circles and tell you exactly where it was on the image. That to me is how we should be using these systems, not
Yeah.
to slow us down or to make us feel self-conscious about how we build and deliver, but they should amplify something that was going to take me 2 weeks. The idea, go build it, let's test it out and actually have a working product.
Hmm.
That's amazing to me.
So talk to the person who looks at that amazing ability and is an engineer today and is concerned and says, they're going to replace me. Like, do you actually see AI leading to fewer engineers, or is there some more nuance there?
Well, I'm a big proponent of robots. So I think that there'll be a whole set of new jobs. I was just at QT the other day, and there was a robot cleaning the floor right beside me. And I
Wow.
walked around it and I moved and it waited. It even gave me a little digital smile. So the software and the hardware is going to continue to evolve into a totally different industry. And there will be much more things for engineers to do. I think engineers are going to be more system thinkers and architects than
Mm-hmm.
actually code writers. But I also think they need to know when something doesn't smell good. And so your ability to detect the problem comes from this seasoned skill that you have. So those who have been in industry for a while, they have an advantage because they know when something doesn't smell good. It doesn't matter who built it. At the end of the
Yeah.
day, this doesn't smell good. I have an idea what that means. That's where their superpower comes in because they have the experience. Now, if you're new, what you should be doing is leaning on those architects and leaning on those senior people to help you think that way. So, no, I don't think AI is going to replace the notion of an engineer, but I do think it becomes a toolkit that they can use to actually accelerate what they already do.
What about engineering leaders? Could AI ever replace some of those functions?
So, an engineering leader's primary responsibility is actually to force multiply themselves through relationships, through communication, and the ability to actually bring out the best in others. So everything I just said reminds me of a soccer coach or a basketball coach or somebody who has been there and done that, and now they want to share their expertise so that the next generation can actually grow. That will always be around.
Yeah.
Leaders leading leaders, but leaders first need to know how to follow. And once they learn how to follow, they can become great leaders. That has nothing to do with technology. It has everything to do with the human connection, which is what I love too. The higher you go as an engineer, the more papers you write. The
Yeah.
higher you go as an engineer, the more conversations you have. It's not necessarily about hands on keyboard. It's now, can you express what's in your head to another human being, and they can catch on fire and understand what you're saying so that they can create a movement. That's what great
Mm,
leaders do. It's not
yeah.
necessarily about the technical part.
Yeah. That's a perfect segue into us understanding more about your background and experience. For the engineers out there who say, man, I'd love to make the move towards management and senior leadership eventually. You've had roles as engineering leadership. You're now an AI startup founder. I'm just curious, tell us a little bit about your story and maybe if there's a through line in your career that kind of brought you through to this point, what you're doing today and how you got here.
Yeah, the first thing I'll say, I don't know how it all ended up this way. If I was to actually try to extrapolate it from what I wanted to do early in my life to where I'm at now, I would not be able to draw a line. It
Hmm.
was so different in so many different areas. And as I started learning and growing in life, it led me to these different places. I would say when I was younger, I wanted to be a building architect. At 7 years old, I would see buildings and I would say, that's something I want to do. And as I started growing and maturing, I started to learn certain things. Number one, my grandfather was a master carpenter and he built the homes that my family lived in Trinidad.
Wow.
I had no idea. So I'm like, okay, engineering, carpentry, that type of stuff must be in my blood. Then I moved to Xerox and I worked for them for 13 years. And I had the most amazing experience. I was working on a product that was in CAD. It was only on the screen when I was an intern. But time I left, we were building 90 something of those machines a day. When we first started, it took us months just to build one part. And so I got to see something that started on the screen, did not have any tangible piece to it, to becoming a world renowned printing press. And we were building 97 a day, 4 miles of wire, immense amount of technology, software, engineering, all the stuff. And all of that that's not even software. That's just traditional engineering, manufacturing floor, building the parts and building the machine. When I moved into software, I was always the one that was fixing the problems on the line. That brought me into, oh, you can use software to help you solve these type of problems and
Okay.
detect them before they happen. And so that's when my love for software really came in, is that I saw it as a way to take something from your mind and actually make it in reality and be able to test it quickly without having to go through months and months and months about building a prototype.
Hmm.
So coming out of that space, I always have the engineering. I always say the free body diagram, which you learned in physics, right? I always have a free body diagram when I think about my problems. And that came from the foundation of traditional engineering. When I started moving into leadership, I started to notice the same trend. There is a science to leadership. How you interact with people, how you motivate them, how do you give them chances and grow is also a skill that you actually have to learn. And once I realized that I can make an impact, not just on the product, but actually in the lives of people, it changed my whole perspective about leadership. I
Hmm.
started to see leadership just as I saw engineering as innovative. The ability to have people work on a common goal and deliver and be successful became my new inspiration. And so moving from the pure engineering side into the leadership side, taking that mindset was what drove me there. So
Yeah.
those who are leaders or those who are in the engineering space and they're thinking about moving into leadership, just know that the same rigor that you had to learn the fundamentals of engineering, you'll need to have that same rigor to learn the fundamentals of leadership. But
Yeah.
what you do is extremely rewarding. being able to know that you are a part of somebody else's journey, to see them grow, to see them be successful, is the greatest gift of being a leader.
Oh, yeah. I love the way that you're talking about it because I think the common tendency that we've all seen is someone's a really good individual contributor, a great engineer. Oh, your next step is an engineering manager, right? And I don't necessarily always see that that person then gets brought up in what leadership is even supposed to look like and feel like and the tools. Did you have did you have access to uh, uh, tools and resources to help you? Did you go find those on your own? How did you actually hone your leadership skills coming out as a great engineer?
Um, so the first thing that I think I mentioned it is great leaders are great followers. And so I had a tremendous amount of leaders who really cared about their people, that was leading me at a very young age. So
Hmm.
in my 20s or even in college, I had these incredible teachers who cared enough to make sure that I was successful. So I saw what leadership looked like and knew that at some point in my life, I was going to be like them because they poured so much into me for me to be successful. I wanted to do it for someone else. And when I see that people who are in leadership that don't have that character, that they just care about growing themselves, everything is about their safety, everything is about their growth, I already know they're going to be terrible leaders.
Hmm.
So if you're getting into leadership because you couldn't go further in engineering, that's very bad. You're getting into leadership because you see that there's promotions available and there's no promotions available at the level that you're at, very bad, disservice. What we want is people who have a passion to actually see others thrive.
Hmm.
And I think that that's where we see the problem. They're only taking it as a way to make more money. They're not taking it as a way to really care about the people that they're serving. And that's why they end up showing up as bad leaders.
Yeah.
Leadership is a very uh, you have to put everybody else above you in leadership. And
Hmm.
if you're not willing to do that, then you're going to have a very difficult time because people can see right through it.
Yeah, of course. Of course. So as you continued to grow as a leader, how did you keep your technical skills sharp and make sure you were staying on top of that side of the game as well?
Oh, man, that's a good question. So, build. You have to keep building. So, when I built Reference Me, we built Reference Me probably 10 years ago, right? We just launched it in a re-expressed way. But what I would do is I would take the code and I would write it in a different language. And I would take the code and I would write it in a different language. Then I would deploy it on different things. But I knew the code so well. So it's built in Python, it's built in Java, it's built in Node, it's built in C Sharp. Every language that I wanted to learn, I just built the program in a different language
Love it.
because I love to continue to build. So to keep your skills sharp, you can't just listen to podcasts. You actually have to go hands on keyboard and play. Uh, it makes it easier now with AI. With AI, you can play on many dimensions now, but that's how I always kept my skills sharp. And even to this day, I still can go into the servers. I can see what's going on. I understand how my monitoring works with the programs that we built. And even when I share with developers what I need for them to do, I'm in there with them with the design, the system thinking, and how we want to do things. And so that's how I've always kept my skills sharp. So what I would say is contribute to open source projects, be engaged in the conversation, and yes, get your hands dirty. Even if you
Mm-hmm.
have to do leak code for a couple of hours every 2 or 3 weeks, you need to keep your ability to do that because when you get into the corporate world, because the problems are so small, and what I
Yeah.
mean by small is that out of many different problems you could be solving, when you get into a corporate setting, they're all trying to solve a specific type of problem. And so you get stuck into this is the only way to solve problems. But you're going to have to branch out and follow those passions, creating these small little projects so that you can stay connected.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. I love that. One final question before we go into learning more about Reference Me, but I think it leads us right there. As an engineering leader yourself, again, we've talked about the fact that you were interviewing many people. Was there a point in time where you realized that just the hiring process as it exists today is just broken and something needs to change?
Yes, and here's what's interesting about that question. When we built Reference Me, it had nothing to do with the issues we're having today, but yet Reference Me applies. That's
Hmm.
how you know that you built a really great solution, because the solution was not predicated on the problem of today. It was actually built to solve a other noble problem, which I'll talk about in a second. So yes, I'm not going to say that the interviewing process is broken, but the talent acquisition process is broken.
Hmm.
The interviewing part, if you have the right people in the room, they'll do a great job of interviewing. But getting the right people in the room, the way that it is now, we are not equipped to actually handle that, especially in the tech space. Because as these systems get more complex, you can't have generic recruiters with no additional information trying to determine whether this person is a good fit or not.
Mm-hmm.
They got to have some technical acumen in, in order to make a better assessment. And so at Reference Me, we recognize that earlier on, that they need additional help. So before they take a resume and give it to a director of engineering and say, I think that this person's a good fit, we want to know, what was your due diligence? But if you are hiring for an AWS role and you don't know what an S3 bucket is, then how are you going to be able to make a good determination of whether this person is skilled or not? We need additional tools and additional help so that the recruiter who doesn't have the background can honestly look at this and feel comfortable before they send this person over to the hiring manager. And that's where Reference Me comes in.
Yeah, I love it. So tell us more about Reference Me, because basically when I think about Reference Me, the theme is you're adding credibility, right, to this entire process, to the talent acquisition process and to the interview process as well. So tell us about Reference Me in your own terms. What are you doing? What
Absolutely.
problems are you solving? How are we doing it?
Yeah. So we should talk about the origins of it. My wife is a physical therapist,
Okay.
and she had the experience of graduating and being a very strong physical therapist in her space. One of the people that you would talk to when you're getting your first job is a clinical instructor. The clinical instructor may have 26 students, but that clinical instructor knows the specialty of the physical therapist. So they are a really good reference. So when you go out for a job, you most likely are going to request that your clinical instructor is a reference for you. But this particular clinical instructor had a rule. Let me know before somebody calls me whether I can give you a reference or not. So my beautiful wife goes out and she applies to hospitals, assisted living places, and in her mind, she's like, "Hey, I may get one or two of them,
Sure.
but what if all of them want her?" And that's exactly what happened. They all were interested in hiring her, and they're like, "Wait, we need to check your references." So all of these different companies kept trying to get access to this clinical instructor to give my wife a reference. And at some point, it became annoying to the clinical instructor, who had to inform her and say, "Listen, you need to let me know ahead of time because I can't wait all day trying to give you a reference." And that's when my wife came to me and said, "You're in technology. Why don't you build something so that I can hold on to my references and not have to keep asking this guy to give me a new reference?" And that's how Reference Me was born. We were solving the problem of this icky feeling of asking somebody for a reference. And then you go to another job and you go ask the same person for a reference again. Then you go to another, and you can see the cycle. This person is a critical reference for you, but you're exhausting the time you're reaching out to them. And as a black woman who's in physical therapy, which is not many of them,
Sure.
They are very cautious about who they're asking and what they're asking for. And so that's what we solved for. We made it very convenient for her to be able to take her reference to companies that she got once from the clinical instructor, but use it many times. That was the solution we were solving for.
Wow.
Now, 2 years later, we find out resumes are perfect. How else can we differentiate ourselves as a top candidate? And reference certified references sounds like an answer, because certified references are not just AI built. Yes, we use AI to help the reference author write the reference, because everybody will actually go to Google and look for templates anyway. So we make
Hmm.
it easy for the reference author to use AI to create the reference. But then we do a mini interview with them, with somebody who has that particular skill, to determine whether you are actually worthy to write the reference.
Wow.
So again, if grandma doesn't know what an EC2 is, and she's trying to write that you have experience with EC2, AWS servers, and we go and talk to her and we say, well, what was the experience like when you were all working on this project and you had to deal with EC2 servers? And she's like, I don't know what you're talking about. Well, you're not going to be a good reference.
Yeah.
And so I'm using that as a tongue in cheek example, but that's actually what's happening today. There's so much fraud associated with what people are putting on their resume, that they say that what they can do and what they can't do, and it's not being backed up by anything. People are even saying, I worked at these FANG companies, and they never stepped foot into those companies.
No.
So
Yeah.
now you just took the opportunity from somebody else who was deserving, because you were putting fraud in place. So with references and certified references, you don't earn the certification badge until somebody from my team who has experience in that space has a conversation with the person who wrote the reference. And once that conversation is ratified, then you get the certification. And that's what makes us different.
Yeah. Yeah. Talk a little bit about how that scales, right? Because you use the term, I think you just used it, but also in videos that I've seen, we're leveraging AI, but we're keeping a human in the loop, right? And we're adding that credential there. But talk a little bit about scalability, right? Because whenever we're hearing and looking at other AI startups, they're trying to keep humans out of the loop because they want to scale, scale, scale as fast as possible. And you're saying, no, let's keep a human in the loop. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, that was the first thing that we realized, is that if we wanted to be a moat and we wanted to have something different than what everybody else is doing, then collecting references automatically and actually presenting the reference automatically is not going to be enough, because everybody can replicate that. But what they can't replicate is the knowledge of actually doing a reference correctly. What's happening in most companies is they just pick a person and they go do the reference, they ask different questions, and then you go and find somebody else, and that person may not have any skill set. All they're doing is verifying that the fact that you wrote the reference or not. But we want to go deeper. We want to ask those questions that you would normally ask somebody in an interview, to qualify that that person is who they are. So when it comes to scaling, we scale with people. So we train people and we ensure that they understand our process on how
Hmm.
we do certification. And then once we get to the place where we need 10 people because we got 1,000, 20,000, 50,000 requests, then we will continue to scale with people, because we believe that using AI and people is the best way. They're the best lie detectors.
Yeah.
If you're a curious person, we want you on our team. You're curious, you'll be able to learn the process that we have for references, and then you'll be able to help companies understand that before that person even put in their application, they already have a certified reference that talks about the wins and how they were able to impact the organization. That gives you personal confidence, because you now, as a knowledge worker, is not the only ones saying that you can do this. There is somebody else with experience that is writing on your behalf. And then two, remember that recruiter we were talking about, who may not have deep experience in AWS. If they see 10 references that are certified talking
Yeah.
about what this person has done in industry, it makes a difference. It gives them more confidence when they give that resume to the director of engineering. Now, they should have been doing this due diligence on their own, but we know how difficult it can be if you got to hire 20, 30 people.
Oh
So
yeah.
we take that energy and say, we want people to not even accept the application until you have certified references.
Wow. Wow. Okay. It really changes the game. I got to think back in my career, 15 years ago, coming out of school, I got started as a recruiter, right? And I remember it was after the point usually of someone had already gotten the job. The references were almost an afterthought, which I think happens like 90% of the time. It's like, oh, we got to
Yes,
get some references for this person. And
that's
so
right.
here I am as a technical recruiter, 3 months into the job, calling engineering managers, calling CIOs, people that hadn't worked with them in 7, 8, 10 years, and asking just for a reference. I didn't know the questions to ask. I didn't know if anything came back it was completely incredulous. I had no clue. I was just typing exactly what they said. And I get reference calls all the time as a leader in our company now for people that work for us. And I can hear the person in the background doing the exact same thing I was doing 15 years ago. It's just a means of checking a box. So I feel like this is a space that's just ripe for disruption. Obviously, you see
Yeah,
the same thing.
absolutely. Why do that at the end? The most important thing that you can do is do it even before they submit the application so that it's a fair and honorable way of hiring.
Yeah.
We're not going to we're not going to cheat the system by creating fake references. We're always going to have a human in the loop that's verifying the reference. And then, if those who don't want to do it may not be the people that you want in the company anyway. And
Yeah.
that's kind of the mindset that we have is, what do you have to hide? You're not able to do this in a very easy and succinct way. And are you the right person for the company?
Hmm.
Now, after the references are created, there's something else that magically happens. And what happens if you use Reference Me, you hire 5 people, and you find out that 4 of the 5 are doing exceptional at the company? It would be incredible to be able to go back to the original reference and see what was the trend of what all of these people said about this person. And if you're able to tie in from the beginning before they even start working that they're going to be superstars in your company because they have these traits that they were
Hmm.
seeing inside of the reference, not just one reference, but over all the references, all of a sudden you now have a huge data point to even be able to tell you whether you think this person can do well in your company or not,
Yeah.
right from the references. And that's where we want to get to.
It's almost like some kind of a probability of success score, like almost like a FICO score for hiring. Is that kind of what you're
Yeah,
thinking?
confidence. We call it a confidence score, but yeah, it's almost like having a confidence score. And when you do things like this, it raises the elevation of everything. So everybody will start doing, or we call it REME. So everybody will start having a REME, which is exactly what we want. And we want other companies to come in and embrace this idea. And now, instead of just asking for a reference, instead of just asking for a resume, there's an expectation that you have a REME. And that
Yeah.
reaming, especially for knowledge workers, is critical because it's almost like I had that t-shirt. I've been there and done that, and here was my success factors. Now, here's what's interesting. What companies will say is, well, you're only going to hear good things. You're never going to hear anything bad about a person's reference.
Hmm.
And if I'm a candidate, I don't want you to see anything bad on the reference. So, of course, I'm going to talk to people who I think are going to give me a good reference. But what we're saying is if many different people all have a similar thread, that that's very different because each person is going to write about you based off of your experience with them. And then when we do the interview, We're going to keep it at the point of what was the impact that that person had. And if there's a common theme across all of these references, then even if they did get a bad reference, but 7 of the other ones are good, it still helps you make a good determination, more so than the resume that you're dealing with today.
Yeah. Yeah. I almost think of it like we were talking earlier, right? Where I'm more likely to want to interview the person that has a typo on their resume because it makes me feel like this person's real. It's like, hey, we're all human beings. I can tell you that there's a bunch of people I wouldn't necessarily want to give a reference about me from way back in my career, but it's almost like there's a human component of, hey, you're not going to be a fit with every single role. If you're not a fit there, let's talk about why you weren't a fit, because that might actually, again, having a credential on that may actually help someone else say, oh, that was the problem there. That won't be an issue here, and here's why.
Yes. So many things happen, right? Having conversations with people is incredible. We can't lose that. And that's why I keep going back to, as we were talking about earlier, yes, we're changing direction when it comes to technology, but we cannot ever lose the human touch.
Yeah.
And us saying that every product that we build will always keep the human as the center piece of it is what our company is committed to. Whether we
Yeah.
decide to start building robots, whether those robots help us to do things, there will always be that human component to it because that's just who we are. That's the essence of the human experiment. We never want to see that get replaced by a system. We always want to have the humans in the loop. So in the future, we will be building tools that will look at AI and give you an indication whether it's AI or not.
Hmm.
So imagine this video that we're having, and there's a little button on the bottom that says, this is real and not AI generated. That's how we want to actually grow in the future because there'll be video interviews, there'll be all of these different things. But where's the company that's actually ensuring that these things are authentic? That's what we want to do.
Yeah. I was just watching a podcast, a video podcast with one of the directors of a Pentagon government program that looks into sightings that people have of things they can't explain in the sky, UFOs, UAPs, you name it. And they're creating a portal right now to allow people to upload footage, audio, anything you have in terms of data so that those items can be investigated. And most of them, they're able to determine, oh, you thought you saw a hovering mothership. It was Venus in the sky, over New
Yeah.
York City or something like that. But one of the key questions there, right? And this is way off topic, but it's on my mind because it's just interesting. As we get further and further advanced with AI and its abilities to create video and audio, like how does an institution like that even validate what people are uploading wasn't just produced on AI, right? It has gotten to that point where I think everyone saw the video of the bunnies jumping on the trampoline recently, and then were appalled to find out that it wasn't real, right? This stuff's happening now.
But I think we will move into that era of like validation. I think
Yeah,
we will ask systems to do things and then it's up to us to determine if they did it right or they did it wrong.
yeah,
And we are going to build AI systems that are also part of the validation space, which exists today, right? If you
hmm,
look at agentic AI, probably at the last step or the beginning step, there's some LLM that's actually doing auditing and verification and determining whether the answer makes sense for the context. So it is happening today. I just think that that's a whole industry that's going to explode.
yeah,
Guardrails, determining if something is real, detecting. I mean, we have the elections coming up in the United States. You can imagine how detrimental it would be if an
oh yeah,
AI just took over these feeds and started, which does happen, but we want to be able to fact check. We want to be able to know that this is authentic. And I think that that's the next wave. I call this term authenticated attention.
hmm,
Authenticated attention is what people are going to crave. It's the reason
yeah,
why when you call customer service and the first thing you say is representative, it doesn't matter what it is, you pressing zero and want to talk to a person. The reason
yeah,
why you want to talk to a person is because you know that if it was a straightforward answer, I wouldn't need to call you.
Hmm.
I'm calling you because it's a complicated situation and I don't want
Exactly.
to waste time trying to go through your prompts to solve my problem. Now, AI does make this a little bit better, but if I actually have to pick up the phone to call you and I want to talk to a human, I don't want to talk to a system.
Yeah, yeah. And for the love of God, if I do talk to your system, by the time the human gets on the phone, please let them be filled in on what we've already
Oh,
discussed.
just
It is
talked about. Oh my
unbelievable.
gosh. That is, that also happens with the job applications, right? They're like, okay, upload your resume. So you upload your resume, and then it's asking you all the questions that were in the resume. And you're like, why are you doing that? I just
Yeah.
uploaded my resume. You have all the information. Well, it's because the way the systems are set up, the interface can't read the information from the
Hmm.
resume. So now you have to manually put it in specifically this way.
Yeah.
That's one of the areas that I think AI will succeed,
Oh,
where
yeah.
anytime you have two different languages, it's able to connect them. It makes
Right.
the
Yeah.
whole
Yeah.
world smaller because we're able to use AI to connect us.
Absolutely. But like even in a world when technology couldn't quite handle parsing out a PDF and putting it in where it needed to go into the system, LinkedIn came in as a game changer and said, "Oh, one click easy apply." And they became the standard where I remember jobs I was applying for 10 years ago, I just filtered for the ones that would allow me to easy apply it because each link took you to a website to go do the exact same procedure and it was miserable. I kind of think, and this is probably my last question for you, but thinking about the reference system that exists today and you're thinking about this in a whole new way, right? What does the world look like in 5 years when your startup is successful, has scaled amazingly, and becomes the gold standard for both job candidates to get their references credentialized, but also for companies to trust that what they're seeing is 100% legit? How does the world look different in 5 years?
That's a great question. I, a little bit. I will say we want to be on the validation space. So we'll do more than references. We would be able to help you find top talent that actually has already been vetted. So your company just focus on telling us what it is that they need, and then you have the external company using our systems to validate, and not just references, but validate credentialing your schooling, credentialing background checks, credentialing um, your ability to communicate, all of these things that are required in order for the company to be successful. We want to take over all of that. So in 5 years, it's not just references, it's everything associated with determining that this candidate would be a good fit for your company.
Yeah, yeah, I love it. Tell people where they can find you. I'm going to give you your first plug on LinkedIn. You put out video content all the time. So if you're not following Gerald Gordon, make sure you click follow, follow Gerald Gordon, check out the content that he's putting out. But Gerald, where can people find you? Where can they find Reference Me? Give us some of those things that we can add and we'll put them in the show notes as well.
Well, thank you. So everywhere we're referenceme.ai. That's actually our website. It's called referenceme.ai. On Instagram, you can find us as referenceme.ai. Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. So we have spaces there. But yeah, if that's one of the things that we are very excited about is that we do take our social media presence really seriously because we know that that's the first impression people are going to have of you is they're going to talk to software to learn about you before they actually talk to you.
Yeah, yeah, I love it. I love it. Again, make sure you send those to me so we'll make sure we can get them into the show notes for YouTube and on LinkedIn so folks can find you. I just want to say thank you for making the time to do this, to join us for this video series. For those who are watching, we're going to continue to have conversations like this, at least one a week with engineering leaders, talent acquisition leaders, folks who are in and around this talent space. And look, we know the world is changing around us. We want to talk to the experts. And so, Gerald, for being the first, we thank you for making the time to join us here and share your insights and about the company you're building.
I really enjoyed this. I am excited to see that we're having these conversations. When you were thinking about this some time ago, people weren't having conversations like they are now about AI and how it affects us. And it's exciting to hear all the different perspectives. So thank you for
Yeah.
having me.
No, thanks for being here. We appreciate it.